General Scott, you speak quite strongly against some of our elected officials, such as the Kennedys, Senator Percy, Senator McGovern, and others regarding their criticism of the Vietnam War. Why do you take issue with these men, General?
Well, sir, I feel a little self-conscious doing it because I make all my speeches as though my mother was sitting in the audience, and she used to be very critical of me. She would say, son, you said something against Mr. McNamara, and after all, he is the Secretary of Defense. And I would say, Mama, where did you read that about him being such a nice American? She said, in the paper, son. Oh, I saw it on television. Well, the point is now that these great men of ours, great names like the Kennedy family has, Ted Kennedy has taken upon himself the authority to talk about something as an expert that he's not an expert on. For instance, Hamburger Hill. We lost a good many brave Americans out there, and for about the first time in the months of this year, we won a little something, and here he takes it over, and he desecrates, veritably, the men who gave their lives out there by being a Monday morning quarterback and saying what he would have done. He doesn't know what he would have done. I wish it were possible for the Kennedys, what's left of them, the Percys, the McGoverns, the Senator Vance Hartkes, and all the other doves in the United States to go out there and be with these brave men who are doing our fighting and our dying and see if they can reason with the Viet Cong, as they seem to think.
General Scott, as elected officials, don't you feel they have the right to speak out?
They certainly do have the right to speak out, but they should be very, very careful that they speak from authority and experience, and I don't think they're being that way.
Has Senator Kennedy any experience in Vietnam?
Senator Kennedy has never heard a shot fired in anger. He's never been in any kind of war. He's never been in any uniform, as far as I know, the Air Force, the Army, or the Navy. Or if he has been in a uniform somewhere, it was certainly some behind-the-line official. And I just think it's time that instead of letting, this thing of equal time on the media, let's let Senator Kennedy say anything he wants. Let's let Hartkes say anything he wants. But also, don't you think we deserve equal time to be given to some of these men who have been out in Vietnam, black and white? Let some of them who have been in Vietnam offering their lives, let them have some time on the media. Because I've just come back from Vietnam, my 4th trip. And I went out there specifically to interview 33 men who I taught to fly out of the 1,000 that I've taught to fly. And of all these 33 and literally thousands of other men that I got to talk to, not one of these men ever said anything about why are we here. They knew. One thing they did say, every one of them, sir, why won't they let us win? And that's the tragedy. We have sent these wonderful men out there, and we have told them at the same time, now don't kill anybody, don't hurt anybody, don't win.
General, almost with his dying breath, General MacArthur warned against getting involved in a land war in Asia. And why did we?
We got involved because we persist in doing exactly the thing the communist enemy wants us to do. We are on the real estate he wants us to be, at the time he wants us to be fighting with the weapons that he wants us to use. That violates all the maxims of war that go all the way back to Napoleon. Now let's take, for instance, 2 years ago, a fine United States Naval Admiral, Ulysses S. Grant Sharp, was out there in command of everything, the overall commander. He finally got disgusted and quit. He couldn't get along with McNamara. LeMay couldn't get along with McNamara. He got disgusted and quit. Arleigh Burke, the chief of naval operations, got disgusted and quit before Admiral Sharp. Admiral Sharp testified and then wrote a story over his signature that he was disgusted for this reason, that we could have won the war out there in 1967 had we used air power properly, naval air power, marine air power, United States Air Force air power, and Army air power properly, just exactly what the communists didn't want us to do. In other words, we persist in doing exactly the way the enemy wants us to do, which is against all the science of war.
Officials in Washington say that this is a political war.
Yes, sir. It is a political war, as Mr. Humphrey says. and the soldiers don't know anything about it. It is an economic war, as Senator McGovern says. It is every kind of war. It's also a shooting, hot military war in which our men are dying. And we have sent these men over there. We've made a bunch of men, a million of them, leave this civilization and go over there, put on a uniform, and leave everything behind them and die. We've offered them the chance of dying, and we haven't given them the chance of winning. Because it's really not just an economic war. It's all kinds of war, including being a military war. And once the civilians have failed to keep the peace, and we always want to work under civilians, all of us soldiers, war is the extension of diplomacy which has failed. But once it has failed, turn it over to the military professional and get the diplomats out of the way.
General, I'd like to talk on a related subject, and that's our China policy. Time magazine, in a recent essay, believed that our China policy should change. They believe that the Nixon administration will change our China policy. You were very close to General Chiang Kai-shek. I'd like to have your comments on the present policy and the possibility of a change and the advisability of a change.
Well, so we have always failed where China is concerned. When I was out there a quarter of a century ago, living with General Chennault, who knew more about the Chinese than any American, I was convinced that we had veritably 1 billion friends. And almost overnight, because we sent the wrong people out there to make the decisions, like General Marshall, we came up with this thing that we lost the friends, and now we have 1 billion enemies. We should have gone in with Chiang Kai-shek, or let him go in, with American naval support, with American air support, long, long ago, 10 years, and I think that the real good Chinese would have rallied to his cause, just like the real good Frenchmen, if we want to consider that element was good back there with Napoleon when they came to his cause. I think we may have waited too long. But Time magazine is a good bit liberal as far as I'm concerned anyway. I don't know that Time magazine even states the point of view that the real Americans should have. We should do anything to get good allies and back them in fighting, and we missed the boat entirely by neglecting Chiang Kai-shek far too long.
General, I would like to ask you one final question. People with your political beliefs are termed super patriots. What do you think of this label?
Yes, sir, we are called fright peddlers. In fact, any American today who advocates a strong posture against the communists is considered that. And once more, I say this, I'm happy to be considered that way, because that means you are hurting the communists. When they tell lies about you and use the big lie technique of Hitler and the communists, then they get away with it, because most of the time they are on the mass media of television. They can get access to the papers. They can get over radio and anything like that. They do call us fright peddlers. They say, I see a communist under every bed. One young man called me the other night and said, you could tell he was a hippie the way he talked, you think there's a communist under my bed? I said, no, I think there's a communist in your bed.